Start video.
For Elaine Lewis, we're going to put it on YouTube, and anyone else who wants to watch it. I hope that that's working. Just make sure this is off.
Are these available on YouTube after the session? Yeah.
Most of them are. There does seem to be some sort of mystery to me about when they are obviously available and when they are somehow hidden.
I thought a religious man would be comfortable with mysteries.
I am very comfortable with uncertainty and mystery, but I am, but as religious or not, I find that technological uncertainty can be frustrating.
Oh, yes.
And you don't know, if you don't know what's happening and you can't figure out where your thing went to, it can be quite the the annoyance. All right, let's see here.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Can you read this word? Is it backwards or frontwards?
It's frontwards.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think what happens is that the piece, what we see,
Right.
In the screen of our camera is backwards.
Right.
But it somehow then gets turned around when it's sort of like, it's seeing it from this way. Somehow we're getting the reflection and it's shooting out in at the right orientation. I don't understand. Again, so the mystery, who knows? Barbara, what's up?
Hi, that's all.
Oh, that's it. You just wanted to say hi.
Yeah, my picture isn't showing up on my iPad. I don't know why.
I was wondering which Barbara it was, so I'm glad to know it's you, Barbara.
Yes.
Good. All right, but you can see everyone else's picture?
Yes.
Well, I can see Helen now, and I can see Sylvia, and I can see Richard.
Good.
And I can see you, but I'm invisible.
You're invisible.
There's a gallery view where I can see everybody.
So Barbara, Helen, you're also using an iPad. Can you remind Barbara where the video on and off button is on the iPad? It's different than on the computer.
The on and off button.
Chat meeting, visual background. Let's see. Here I am.
I press leave.
Here
and
I
then it
am.
comes up leaving session and I just press it and I'm off.
Okay.
Leave
Yeah.
session. or
I'm
whatever.
on the virtual.
You leave this.
I have a virtual. Can you see me now?
No, we can
Yes.
see your name,
Yes,
and we know that you're using an iPad.
I am.
I see Shanti.
You see Shanti.
Hi.
Good. All right. Good. I'm
Hi.
gonna lower your hand. All right. So I think we will get started. So I'm gonna make this full screen for me, and I'm gonna share a screen. Oh, I have to change that. Okay. I'm gonna share a screen.
Wow. Who have I got?
You all right? Hello, Ren.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm late.
All right. Here we go.
Okay. Jim Morgan.
All right. So good. I'm glad to see everybody here. I don't know what's going on here. All right, there we go. All right, so we're going to be looking at this piece here. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So I see that. Let's see. Some people do not, and then we have someone on the phone now. Good. And Sandy just joined us. We have a minion. There we go. All right. Good deal. All right. So the article that we're going to be reading today is "The Courage to Be Alone." I have to confess that I'm not 100% sure what I think of the article, but regardless of whether I had a Jewish education teacher one semester who used to say, when someone asks you what you thought of the movie, it's not worth telling him, I liked it, I didn't like it, whatever, tell him something about the movie. And so that's kind of how I feel about this article. I'm not sure if I liked it or I didn't like it, but in a certain sense, that's beside the point, because the fact of the matter is that the article had a lot of pieces in the article that sort of rang bells for me, or sort of made me think in a way that I appreciated. And it also pointed to me to some very interesting texts that I was not aware of. And those are the ones that I thought if we had time, we'd look at them. And if we didn't have time, depending on whether we thought we were interested or not, we could even look at them next week. All right, so the author here, and thanks to Sandy, I am now putting the bio of the author at the very top of the page, so you can see it right away. So Megan Craig is the person's name. She is an associate professor of philosophy and art at Stony Brook, which is in Long Island. Whoops. I'm going to mute you while you deal with that. Okay. And she is the author of Levinas and James. Hold on one second. Of Levinas and James Towards a Pragmatic Phenomenology.
What does that mean?
I wish I could tell you. I don't know.
You chose the article.
I chose the article, but this is not the article. This is her book.
Oh.
Phenomenology is one of those philosophy terms that I keep on bumping into, and I never. Pragmatic probably makes some certain amount of sense to you, right? That we're trying to be useful in the world. We're trying to be helpful, and so a phenomenology, probably has to do with trying to describe, what happens, what are the phenomena of the world, and how do we make sense of them? And a pragmatic one, it would appear, would be one that would help us actually towards our lives being better. But I don't want you to take my word for that. All right. Anyway, so Megan Craig is also a mother, and this article is about her walks outside with her daughter during our coronavirus.
Phenomenology, I know.
All right. Who's on the phone? Wanted to say something?
Yes, can you hear me, Rabbi Jim?
Is it you're 0549?
Yes, it's Sheila.
Oh, Sheila, great. Nice to have you. I definitely can hear you. What's up?
Well, I was thinking about phenomenology, and I used to be a phenomenologist myself.
Oh, wow.
And
You can tell us.
this is my understanding of it. I could be wrong, but it is the existence that you're existing while you're experiencing it. So phenomenology refers to the actual existence and experience of that existence. And it's fleeting. It doesn't last very long. It goes along with your life.
Right. Very nice.
Is that your understanding?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, I'll talk to you. Well, you'll continue listening, and you'll tell us how. You can tell us if this sounds like a phenomenological. Actually, what you said makes a lot of sense in the context of this article as I read it. So based on what Sheila just said, right, that phenomenology is trying to grasp what actually happens in our life, but obviously it's going to be very fleeting because the experiences in our life tend to be fleeting, right? That this article had very much that kind of a feel. So let's see what we can do with it. Okay, my youngest daughter told me that Annabelle, her baby doll, might have the coronavirus. We talked about. All right, let's see. I think I'm gonna mute everybody.
Yeah, I'm at a meeting. Very good. Bye-bye.
I'm going to mute everybody while I'm reading, and then if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand, and then we will take your questions. Okay. We talk about it as we take a daily walk up the road. She's not sure yet whether it is diabetes or the virus. Annabelle's symptoms vary, but she has not left the small cradle by the side of my daughter's bed in days. I have been told I can babysit for Annabelle, but only if I promise to hold her gently and not give her candy. My daughter holds my hand as we walk. She wants to talk about her doll's sickness every day. Not surprisingly, she's not sure when or if Annabelle will get a test. Sounds like classic play therapy. I ask whether she's anxious about Annabelle. She says not really. She thinks she will recover and maybe just need a shot. We walk on in the sloppy spring snow. The days are getting longer and the walks are getting longer. Our conversation looping like piles of old garden hose. In addition to Annabelle, we have talked about rocks and crystals and a pretend set of sisters, of which she, my youngest, is the oldest. One of the sisters is pregnant and one is traveling in Europe. My daughter tells me that she is married and her husband is a good guy, but has left that morning by plane for Florida. He is apparently a reporter in Sanibel. We pick up some rocks and put them in our pockets. Later, I will have to give her my hat to hold all her treasures. And later still, I will put my cold hands in my pockets and find dirt. I have told her that her grandpa has cancer, a surprise to her. It's not serious, I say, and that sounds insane. I clarify that it's the best form of cancer one could possibly hope for, a highly inactive form of leukemia. She is now nodding at me in the same way I nodded at her before. We are walking along a path made of wood chips. It cuts through the forest along lines created by fallen oaks in a tornado that ripped through Connecticut in May of 2018. That spring, I came to this same place and sat among the shattered trees. Many of the trunks exploded 8 or 10 feet up from the ground in the shape of splattered palms. Others lay prone in piles. Several split in the middle, leaving gaping shapes that framed the disaster like keyholes into a broken world. Now the area is clear and open and flooded with sun. While we talk, I have to remind my daughter to keep moving. The faster she talks, the slower she goes. I am trying to listen to her, but half of my mind is thinking about other things. If I'm quiet for too long, she tugs at my hand, pulling me back into conversation. It is hard to keep in focus the reality of her mittened fingers and the reality of the world at once, both of them vying for my attention. All right, so very interesting. I love what Sheila said about this because there's all these sort of fleeting impressions, right, that she's able to sort of snag and put into words and down onto the paper, right? And realizing, right, that there's the world to look at and there's her daughter to listen to, right? And those two things are somehow competing for the mother's attention. Suddenly, I'm reminded of William James's essay on a certain blindness in human beings, in which he writes about the difficulty of being present to another person's life. James uses a Robert Louis Stevenson story of young boys who form a secret club of lantern bearers, hiding small tin lanterns under their heavy coats as a secret emblem of participation. From the outside, they look just like anyone else hurrying by in the cold night. But when they meet one another, they lift the edge of their coats to reveal a hot burning lamp hanging from a belt loop. I've always loved the image of these kids hiding fire, their faces momentarily illuminated to one another in lamplight, triumphant in their allegiance to the game. All right, so I'll read this next paragraph, and then I think what I'll do, with your permission, is that I'll jump to the piece from Robert Louis Stevenson, at least a little bit of it. It's actually not a story. It's an essay about writing and about literature, and it also is a kind of a memoir. He seems to be remembering his own childhood. But James, right, regardless of, and I actually think that this is what Stevenson was writing about as well. James says that this is what Stevenson is writing about. James was writing about how hard it is to see someone else's inner light, the thing that keeps them illuminated in dark times, especially when we are fixated on our own lives. We pass one another, intent on ourselves and our own problems, never imagining the burning fire under the dark coat. All right, so I'm going to pull forward here Okay, so Robert Louis Stevenson, The Lantern Bearers. So that's the name of that's actually the name of the essay. And the first part of the essay is a memoir of his childhood town, and all the places they used to hang out, and all the fun things they used to do, especially during the summer. And then it leads back towards September, when school was going to start again. And for whatever reason, this game that they played, a game that he reports that he tried to get other groups of kids in other places to play, but never was successful. So towards the end of September, when school time was drawing near and the nights were already black, we would begin to sally from our respective villas, each equipped with a tin bullseye lantern. The thing was so well known that it had worn a rut in the commerce of Great Britain, and the grocers about the due time began to garnish their windows with our particular brand of luminary. We wore them buckled to the waist upon a cricket belt, and over them, such was the rigor of the game, a buttoned top coat. They smelled noisomely of blistered tin. They never burned aright, though they would always burn our fingers. Their use was naught, the pleasure of them merely fanciful. And yet a boy with a bull's eye under his top coat asked for nothing more. The fishermen used lanterns about their boats, and it was from them, I suppose, that we had got the hint. But theirs were not bull's eyes, nor did we ever play at being fishermen. The police carried them at their belts, and we had plainly copied them in that. Yet we did not pretend to be policemen. Burglars, indeed, we may have had some haunting thoughts of, and we certainly had an eye to past ages when lanterns were more common, and to certain storybooks in which we had found them to figure very largely. But take it for all in all, the pleasure of the thing was substantive. And to be a boy with a bull's eye under his topcoat was good enough for us. When two of these asses met, there would be an anxious, "Have you got your lantern?" And a gratified, "Yes." That was the shibboleth, and very needful too, for it was the rule to keep our glory contained. None could recognize a lantern bearer unless, like the polecat, by the smell. 4 or 5 would sometimes climb into the belly of a 10-man lugger with nothing but the thwarts above them, for the cabin was usually locked, or choose out some hollow of the links where the wind might whistle overhead. There the coats would be unbuttoned and the bull's eyes discovered, and in the checkering glimmer under the huge windy hull of the night, and cheered by a rich steam of toasting tinware, these fortunate young gentlemen would crouch together in the cold sand of the links, or on the scaly bilges of the fishing boat, and delight themselves with inappropriate talk. Woe is me that I may not give some specimens, some of their foresights of life, or deep inquiries into the rudiments of man and nature. These were so fiery and so innocent. They were so richly silly, so romantically young. But the talk, at any rate, was a condiment. And these gatherings themselves only accidents in the career of the lantern bearer. The essence of this bliss was to walk by yourself in the black night, the slide shut, the top coat buttoned, not a ray escaping, whether to conduct your footsteps or to make your glory public, a mere pillar of darkness in the dark. And all the while, deep down in the privacy of your fool's heart, to know you had a bullseye at your belt, and to exult and sing over the knowledge. All right, so I'm gonna ask people for just some quick reactions to this little piece of Stevenson. There's more of the Stevenson to read, but what do you think he's talking about here? How do you take this? Yeah, go ahead, Naomi. I'm trying to unmute you, but you have to unmute yourself, Naomi.
Yeah, there I go. He's talking about this sense of belonging to something.
Yeah.
Of having, of just having this vague, or in this case, more specific, but yeah, just a sense of being part of something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. But it's also, but it's interesting to me, right, that he says, right, that the talk and the gathering, right, were but a condiment and accidents, right? The essence was to be by yourself. Like you knew that you had this thing.
Yeah.
right? You knew that you had this thing. And that was, you had this burning thing at your side, that did, I think, and I think you're right, Naomi, right, that it put you into a particular category, right? It made you belong to a certain group, but the groupness of it was less important than the belonging to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, Jim, Richard here.
Go ahead.
I'm glad people don't write like that anymore. How verbose. I was an editor, and boy, it was my editing, my blue pencil itching to get a hold of that document.
Well, just recall though, right, that that people used to what's the word I'm looking for? People used to
Paid.
write by the word, right? They would be paid by the
guess.
word.
But there sure are a lot of adjectives in there.
100%, right? And we don't give passes to a lot of adjectives beyond beyond the great writers, right? So Robert Louis Stevenson, we'll give him a pass on that. I don't know. But,
I think
I
that's
guess we have to.
problematic. Try Herman Melville.
yeah. Oh yeah. And
Oh, yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Call me Ishmael or what.
yeah, exactly.
That's the shortest sentence the man ever wrote.
I think it is.
Well, how about Faulkner? He had one sentence that went in The Bear. They went on for like 3 pages. A
Yeah.
single sentence.
Surprised.
Remarkable.
Barbara Baird, do you have something to say? I see that you're off.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I thought that the original story was quite charming. And I thought that Stevenson was really saying the same thing that she was
Yeah.
about belonging to something and also being able to be alone.
Yes, right. And I think that's right. That if you have, we'll read the rest of the article. But if you have in your heart, right, the assurance, right, that you've got your lantern, that you've got your light that's burning, right, that then you that's what you need, and everything else you've got, right, is what would you say? I guess frosting on the cake, a condiment, right? A condiment. It's not.
That's a good way to describe it.
Go ahead, Barbara.
I said, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to read one more paragraph of the Stevenson, and then we'll go back to the essay we started with. All right, so it is said that a poet has died young in the breast of the most stolid. It may be contended rather, he doesn't like that idea. It would be contended rather that a somewhat minor bard in almost every case survives. And, or maybe he's not saying that it's not true that a poet, but there's also the minor bard, right? And is the spice of life to his possessor. Justice is not done to the versatility and the unplumbed childishness of man's imagination. His life from without may seem but a rude mound of mud. There will be some golden chamber at the heart of it, in which he dwells delighted, and for as dark as his pathway seems to the observer, he will have some kind of bullseye at his belt. So let's see. Lois, I'm going to just turn you down for a bit. Okay. All right. So I love this paragraph, right? Because it reminds us, right, that it can be very easy to sort of assume, right, that somebody who we don't know, has a, what is it, that his life may be but a rude mound of mud, right? But within whatever external trappings, right, there will be some golden chamber at the heart of it. Right? All right, so I see Sheila's voice up. So Sheila, go ahead. Oh, I lost you, Sheila. There you are. Go ahead.
I wanted to go back to the Stevenson paragraphs about childhood with the light.
Yeah.
it's definitely phenomenological. He's talking about the experience as it's happening, and it's amazing writing because he's talking about the existence of this event when he goes off with his friends to hide in a place, and he's talking about it as if he's doing it, and it's amazing because he's looking back to his childhood but writing that way as if he was experiencing it then. So I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, I found this completely gripping. I mean, I agree with Richard, right? That it's writing in a different of a different era, and it's we don't tend to get writing like this much anymore. The richness of the vocabulary, the number of words that he uses in order to convey his ideas, but there is something so, I think, powerful in his evocation, as you say, of the experience of childhood, and if I can recall my own childhood, that in those moments when I had a sense, right, of whatever it was, right, that there was some sort of golden bullseye that I was carrying around and in essence hiding from everybody else, right? There's a feeling of that which is it's quite a delicious feeling. All right, so I think at this point
It's really wonderful.
so I think yeah, go ahead. Do you want to say more, Sheila?
I just wanted to say it was really wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so I'm going to go back up to our original thing. Okay, right. So right here, so James was writing about how hard it is to see someone else's inner light, right? And that's how the rest of the essay goes, and that's the part that James really loves. James actually claims in this essay, the one that she mentions here, what is it called? On a Certain Blindness in Human Beings. He claims that this essay, The Lantern Bearers, is the best thing that Stevenson ever wrote. I don't know if it's just because it accorded so well with his thoughts. I don't have enough experience of Stevenson, at least in my conscious memory, for me to say yes or no to that. So I'm thinking about James, she writes, and remember being in Italy last summer, watching the lights across the valley in Assisi coming on in a dotted dance as the sun went down, a smatter of earthly stars. And then I try to recall something the philosopher Emmanuel Levinas wrote in an essay after the Holocaust, something about how difficult it would be to teach children born after the war the lessons they would need, and especially the strength required to survive in isolation. I would like to hold that text and read it again. It was written in French, but called Nameless in the English translation. The French is called Son Nom, and I was not able to find it on the internet this morning. There were articles about it that I found, but not the essay itself. And it was published in a book that on Amazon goes for like $750. So I'm not going to be purchasing that book. So I did find that they have it at the Boston College Library. So if I can somehow get a friend of mine who teaches there to get it for me, maybe I will, because it sounds really interesting. Anyway, so we are cresting a small hill, and my daughter suddenly sits down. She is hungry and tired and doesn't want to walk anymore. I sit beside her, still wondering about what Levinas said. It was something about the courage required to be alone about a fragile consciousness and the importance of the inner light. Yes, that was it. The lantern shining under the coats of those young boys, the rocks in our pockets, the inner life that cannot be seen or guessed or known from the outside, and that therefore cannot be so easily extinguished or taken away. The inner life that kept Levinas alive after being captured by the Nazis and sent to a prison camp in France in 1940, separated from his wife and daughter, apart from the world, something secret to hold on to that cannot perish or crack or fall, something private and still the core of a life. Excuse me 1 second. I'll be right back. I forgot to wake up my child. He was taking a nap.
Oh, hearing. I think I have to get my hearing like straightened out. So, do you have to go ahead in? No, I'm not doing very good. It's not helping. I have to go to that hearing, so the call, I think they said it's open Tuesday. I'm gonna call right now before do you want to use my phone? No, but I don't.
All right, here we go. All right, as we sit at the edge of the trail, the snow glints, and I think of those across the globe who are dying alone in rooms closed off to the outside, left with their inner lives, tending their own fires. Snow is falling slowly in fat flakes. The ground is cold, even as daffodils have pushed up early this year. We may look for a Jack in the Pulpit later today, hoping to find the purple and green leaf curled around the tiny white spadix, nestled there like a prayer. All is quiet in the woods except for the clatter of a woodpecker somewhere nearby. As if answering the rhythm, bits of songs begin replaying in my head, linking together the inner life and the weak lights. The duo September 67, You Once Called Me a Lantern. Now, I'm not going to assume that anyone here has heard of this duo September 67. I had never heard of them. I looked them up on the internet and on Spotify and found their album, but I couldn't find their lyrics anywhere. So I don't know what song involves the lyric, You Once Called Me a Lantern. I'm going to listen to their.
I'll take the plain croissant.
I'm going to listen to their record, and I will keep you posted if I find it. The next person, Nick Drake, is much more well known. Has anyone heard of Nick Drake? Yeah. All right. So I thought we would. This song
Pink
is,
Moon, Pink Moon.
Pink Moon, exactly. Pink Moon. This song is one of the ones that was released late after he had passed away, and so I'm gonna call it up, and we can listen to it here.
Oh, damn it.
Summer was gone and the heat died down, and autumn reached for her golden crown. I looked behind as I heard a sigh, but this was the time of no reply. The sun went down and the crowd went home. I was left by the roadside all alone. I turned to speak as they went by, but this was the time of no reply. The time of no reply is calling me to stay. There's no hello and no goodbye. To leave, there is no way. The trees on the hill had nothing to say. They would keep their dreams till another day. So they stood and thought and wondered why. For this was the time of no reply. Time goes by from year to year, and no one asks why I'm standing here. But I have my answer as I look to the sky. This is the time of no reply. The time of no reply is calling me to stay. There's no hello and no goodbye. To leave, there is no way. Summer was gone and the heat died down, and autumn reached for her golden crown. I looked behind as I heard a sigh, but this was the time of no reply.
All right, so reactions to that, if you have any.
I hadn't realized how much like Donovan he sounded.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's such an interesting song, this idea that, you know, everyone is going away, that you're not going to get a reply from anyone. You really have to, you know, you have to look inside. You have to find what you have for yourself. It really is it's really an evocative expression of that feeling of being alone, and finding that, you know, you're not going to get a response from the people around you. You really have to go to your own resources. I don't think I'll play the Leonard Cohen song right now. If we have time at the end, we can, but hold on, my brother, my sister, hold on tight. I finally got my orders, and I'll be marching through the morning, marching through the night, moving through the borders of my secret life. This idea, right, that we have, we have, right, a life that is somehow separate from all other, secret, in fact, from all others, and we are the ones who really know what's happening there. This one, I would say, is not so much about being alone in the world, right? It's more just about having one's own internal life that doesn't need to be limited or controlled by the needs of others, right? So the brother and the sister can hold on tight, right? I'm going to be going through my own day, you know, in through the borders of my secret life, right? Which doesn't mean he's abandoning them, doesn't mean that he's not connected to them, just that he's not beholden completely to them. I am inadvertently humming the tune when I hear her say, "Mom, stop it." I don't know how many of you are how many of you are parents, but I certainly can relate to this line of you know, singing some old song and my kids being impatient with me for you know, singing a song and, you know, myself, as opposed to paying attention to them. We are walking again, a little stiff and a little grumpy, ready to be home. I am listening to something about another baby doll. This one is named Zoe. She is having a birthday party later, and I am invited. Annabelle is too sick to attend. We talk about the decorations and the cake. Now we are picking up speed, discussing the guest list and games, coming down the hill in the sharp wind. To simply reply as if this is what matters is the best I can do. It is her world, and these are her tiny lights, her babies tucked in their beds, the rocks and crystals in her fists, all of it fiercely real and important as the world seems to fall apart around us. Someday, if she finds herself in isolation and I am not there, she will have her own songs and some courage based in these walks, in this circuitous make-believe, which is as good as any philosophy. A rhythm of talking and walking etched in her memory to repeat on her own, a rich inner life, an inner life rich with voices and creatures and the remembered pressure of our hands. I hope so. Her grip suddenly drops mine and she begins to run towards home. We are learning together how to be alone. All right, so I'll stop just for a minute and ask for impressions, thoughts, reactions to what we've read so far. And then we can continue with a little bit of more of the Stevenson, which I think was also very interesting, as well as there's another little piece by a different philosopher, a contemporary, and I think even a colleague of William James, who had something interesting to say also on this topic. But we'll stop now for just any thoughts that people have. Go ahead, Richard.
I like the way the last two lines are look like they're part of a poem.
Yeah. Yeah, I found this whole essay to be sort of full of poetic language. And it sort of bounced back and forth between evocative images and I guess, you know, this, you know, sort of again, a kind of, a grabbing on to sensations and experiences and impressions that I thought was quite beautiful. Go ahead, Naomi.
Muted. I found myself thinking about, I think it's Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, where he is also very isolated and having this concept, and yet finding when he leaves the camps that the people whom he had conceptualized and whom he had known and thoughts of whom had been one of the things keeping him going, that they were no longer there. And I found that a little frightening.
Yeah.
So what happens? I'm doing these gestures, by the way, because I have fruit flies and there is one that is buzzing me.
Oh no. Ah.
But yeah, I could not help but think about his experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it feels to me that there is that kind of resonance, right? Where we have that now, where we are surrounded by this pandemic and with people dying and people sort of disappearing from our lives, and we often don't even know sometimes because the usual modes of communication are also overloaded. Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
I heard a fly buzz when I died, Emily Dickinson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
English
Yeah.
major.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please don't die.
No. Barbara, you want to say something?
Who, me?
Yeah, you took off your mute, so I didn't know if you wanted to say something.
Oh, was I muted? I was muted before.
Muted before, now you're unmuted.
Well, no wonder you couldn't hear me when I was trying to say.
That's why I couldn't hear you. Yeah.
Okay, well, I can say something now. It's okay to be alone. It's okay to explore while you're alone. And considering that here we are more than we used to be, although there is some contact, you have to sort of reach in and find other issues to deal with, and not issues, but other things to do.
Right.
If you can.
Right.
Do the best you can, I guess.
I agree. I think this is such I like this essay so much because I think precisely it is pointing to the fact, right, that although it is true in our current day and age that isolation, right, is very common and it's very dangerous, right? That isolation doesn't have to. Isolation is not necessarily the same as solitude. I heard someone talking about this on the radio the other day, right? That solitude in some ways is chosen or at least embraced, right? Whereas isolation is something that's sort of forced upon us, and that that's why they call it we have to go into isolation. But we don't talk about going into solitude, right? We tend to embrace solitude. Yeah, go ahead, Naomi.
Yeah, there were a great many. Well, I'm thinking about just the title "Bowling Alone."
Yeah.
Because there seemed to be, even before this started, all sorts of things about how we were losing senses of community, senses of family, senses of the ties that kept people together.
Right.
And now suddenly we have this enforced isolation. And yet one of the things that is coming out of the enforced isolation is if you are isolated in a family that isn't getting along too well together, this can almost be an abusive situation. This can be an abusive situation.
Yeah.
The forced community as opposed to the chosen community. There are all sorts of concepts here that I'm sure to tackle.
It's a very complicated set of it feels almost like a complicated physical, physics equation or something like this, that there, you don't want to be isolated, yet you do need solitude, and and community of some variety is a necessity. But if it's completely forced on you and with enforced norms of that community, right, that can be very damaging. Just as if there are sort of no norms at all in the community, right, that can lead to a kind of anarchy and dysfunction of its own. So it's like this very complicated multi leveled balancing act that we need to somehow pull together. But yeah, very, but still very important. But I think also what's interesting is that there's a sort of an assumption when we talk about isolation, especially recently, that there's an assumption that being alone is the same as being isolated, and that people don't have the inner life that's necessary to be alone successfully, so to speak. And this article is really sort of arguing on one hand that an inner life that can get you through isolation is not only possible but probable, and also, right, that there is a way in which we need to foster that inner life within ourselves. We need to to take Stevenson's metaphor, right, we need to acquire the lantern, right? We need to keep it lit, even though it doesn't work very well, right? We need to keep it hidden under our coat, right? Without letting it burn us, without letting it set our coat on fire, right? And we have to sort of constantly tend to it and make sure that it's there. And we also have to put up, I think, is part of his point, which I think we'll go there now, right? We need to put up with the fact that it's that people won't necessarily see it within us, right? That people will not necessarily assume that we have it. That there's a tendency to assume that, oh, that person's life is empty. That person doesn't have anything going on because they don't have because they're keeping their light, their bullseye under their coat. All right, so I'm going to read the rest of the excerpt that and I have to confess, I was having a hard time deciding which pieces of the Stevenson to bring. I had the first two paragraphs, and after that, what I did was I just took the whole excerpt that James had taken. There's more to the Stevenson essay that James doesn't put in, and you might think that James put too much in, but I'll read it anyway. Okay, so there is one fable that touches very near the quick of life. The fable of the monk who passed into the woods, heard a bird break into song, hearkened for a trill or two, and found himself at his return a stranger at his convent gates. For he has been absent 50 years, and all of his comrades there survived but one to recognize him. It is not only in the woods that this enchanter carols, though perhaps he is native there. He sings in the most doleful places. The miser hears him and chuckles, and his days are moments. With no more apparatus than an evil-smelling lantern, I have evoked him on the naked links. All life that is not merely mechanical is spun out of two strands, seeking for that bird and hearing him. And it is just this that makes life so hard to value, and the delight of each so incommunicable, right? So impossible to communicate the delight and the value of each life, because it in some ways is so difficult both to seek and hear the bird. And it is just a knowledge of this and a remembrance of those fortunate hours in which the bird has sung to us or I guess we should say, the bird has sung to us, that fills us with such wonder when we turn the pages of the realist. He's talking about literature now. There, to be sure, we find a picture of life insofar as it consists of mud and of old iron, cheap desires and cheap fears, that which we are ashamed to remember and that which we are careless whether we forget, but of the note of that time-devouring nightingale we hear no news. All right, so I'm going to just go. All right, yeah. Say that we came in such a realistic romance on some such business as that of my lantern bearers on the links, and describe the boys as very cold, spat on upon by flurries of rain, and drearily surrounded, all of which they were, and their talk as silly and indecent, which it certainly was. To the eye of the observer, they are wet and cold and drearily surrounded. But ask themselves, and they are in the heaven of a recondite pleasure, the ground of which is an ill-smelling lantern. Right? So this sort of notion, right, that if we focus on the external realities, right, we're not going to catch what we described before, right, as this sort of really amazing writing. This is a very different kind of description of the lantern bearers than what Stevenson had written before. All right. For to repeat, the ground of a man's joy is often hard to hit. It may hinge at times upon a mere accessory like the lantern. It may reside in the mysterious inwards of psychology. It has so little bond with externals that it might even touch them not. And the man's true life for which he consents to live lie together in the field of fancy. In such a case, the poetry runs underground. The observer, poor soul with his documents, is all abroad, and he's completely lost. For to look at the man is but to court deception. Right? We shall see the trunk from which he draws his nourishment, but he himself is above and abroad in the green dome of foliage, hummed through by winds and nested in by nightingales. And the true realism were that of the poets, to climb after him like a squirrel and catch some glimpse of the heaven in which he lives. And the true realism always and everywhere is that of the poets, to find out where joy resides and to give it a voice far beyond singing, right? And this actually, from the little bit of Levinas I know, this sounds an awful lot like that to me, a century later. For to miss the joy, or not quite a century, half a century. For to miss the joy is to miss all, right? And this is the sentence that James really, grabs onto, right? To miss the joy is to miss all. In the joy of the actors lies the sense of any action. That is the explanation, that the excuse. To one who is not the secret of the lanterns, the scene upon the links is meaningless, and hence the haunting and truly spectral unreality of realistic books. In each we miss the personal poetry, the enchanted atmosphere, that rainbow work of fancy that clothes what is naked and seems to ennoble what is base. In each, life falls dead like dough instead of soaring away like a balloon into the colors of the sunset. Each is true, each inconceivable, for no man lives in the external truth among salts and acids, but in the warm, phantasmagoric chamber of his brain with the painted windows and the storied walls. Sheila, I saw you come a little bit closer on my screen. Did you want to say something? Sheila, did you want to say something? I'll take that.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I think the last part that you read really shows the difference between the internal and the external. And what Stevenson was really writing about was the internal,
Yes.
which is so amazing because he's looking back on his childhood, but he's writing as if he's there. And it's very, very wonderful. And
Right.
then, he's not looking at it externally, it's internal.
Right.
It's excellent.
Right.
It's amazing.
What I really love about it is the degree to which he can sort of acknowledge the external. He can sort of say, this external is completely unprepossessing and is, almost off-putting, right? In how, it's cold and it's dark and what they're talking about is silly and indecent, and they're really uncomfortable. And what's missed in that kind of a description, right, is all of what's wonderful, what you know, that sort of knowledge of having something inside that's more important than external. And then also what Naomi said, right, of this sort of sense of belonging in this, you know, sort
In
of
the group, yeah.
gulf.
Really excellent. I loved it.
Okay, Naomi, you have something to add?
If I could write like that, I'd be happy.
It would
It's
be that, would be something.
almost the kind of thing that I would want to read 2 or 3 times
Yes.
before I reacted to, because it just seems to me there's an awful lot there that just on the quick reading, I'm not quite getting yet.
Yeah. I have to say I've read it now 3 times, and it's beginning to sort of take a little bit of shape in my brain. But you have the link to my to the Google document there, and so feel free to use it. Go ahead, Richard.
I don't understand that fable. It makes no sense to me. The one about the monk in the woods.
Yeah.
It's almost, it doesn't feel like it's written in English. I don't understand it. I'm happy to have someone's opinion on it. it's just.
Yeah. It's not, I don't know that it's entirely clear to me either. I think what it is though is that the my sort of quick and dirty read of it, right, is that he follows the bird's song, right? And he's in his life fully, right? So much so that Rosie's having some fun. He's so deeply into his life that he doesn't even notice the passage of time, right? The externals of the world just completely retreat, and he's in his own internal world fully. And when he finally comes back, right, it's 50 years later, right? And so he's sort of like the long lost monk. Nobody remembers him, right? But for himself, right, it was just a moment or two. Yeah, go ahead, Naomi.
This is a variant, I think, on a lot of folk tales from various cultures of a person who disappears into some kind of vortex or a process,
right,
and returns possibly enlightened, possibly not. But I have seen this theme in other writings of other cultures.
Wonderful. All right, well, thank you everyone very much. I also commend to you the Leonard Cohen song, with which I was also unfamiliar. So there's a link to it in this Google Doc, to the YouTube of it, so you can listen to that as well. And I look forward to seeing you all there. Jewish Learning was going to be on Wednesday at 2:30. It will be changed to a different time. I have to go and officiate at a funeral, so I will be in touch. Please look for an email with the rescheduled time. We will be continuing with our study of the book of Joshua, which is likely to be of some interest to people who do not consider themselves religious, because it is also sort of literary and historical, as well as religious. So I look forward to seeing you there if you're interested in it. And I hope you have a great rest of your Monday, and go cultivate your inner life, I guess is what is the message of this thing. So all the best to everybody. I'm going to unmute everybody so people can say goodbye if they'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay well.
Buddy.
Thank you.
Bye, Rabbi Jim. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for an interesting discussion, as always.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah, it's always good.
Oh, I love that.
I don't know if we'll get.
Has assumed the responsibility of that.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, sweetheart. So the class just ended. How are you? Okay, but call me back later, like 5 o'clock or something like that. Whenever, I'm here. Very good. Bye. Hello? Hello? Hi? Hi, Will. Grandma, I have a genealogy question. By the way, I saw what you posted with the Lego people. Excellent. All right. Now I got was it a call from David Schwartz? You know, okay. Hi, Sandy. I hope you and the family are safe and well. Where are you staying these days? Also, I got this message the other day from someone saying they're related to Eddie's mother. That's his grandfather. Does his name ring a bell? And this is the message. David, hi. My name is Ron Geffen from Israel, and I think we are relatives. Your I'm going. Your great grandmother Lena Rosenfield Kronick, Kronick, was my great grandmother's sister. Can I get your email to send you all the family? My email, and he gives it. Do you think I should reply to him? Well, I think, of course, but this Lena, my Uncle Eddie's mother, was at my wedding. And so I called Becky because she has the wedding album here, and for a picture of, no, anyway, here, let me, so definitely, now, let me get the picture. No, the one that Becky sent? No, I think. Right, you've seen it. Becky, okay, here, I found it. Becky, the picture, the attachment has Lena Kornfeld, Rosenfield. So I definitely think I would respond. I told David definitely to respond to him, you know, whatever they can figure out, or what now, yes, what Becky said, what from the attachment was Lena Kornfeld Rosenfield. Now I'm going to go back to what he has there. I'm not bad, but I'm not that good. But he has Lena Rosenfield Kronick, Kronick, was my great grandmother's sister. So, and I want to send you this. Oh, how do I do that? I'm on like a chat thing. I'm gonna try. I'll do it. That would be wonderful, because very good, wonderful. And I think what you, terrific. I said how you don't have a family tree, you have a sequoia. So if anyone, I mean, here we're going back a lot of great grandmother's sister. That was not yesterday. Wonderful. Very good, sweetheart. Okay, we'll talk another time. Right. Bye.